think ultimately we've been told time and time again, now you need to record everything, you need to write stuff down from this journey of where we started to where we're kind of getting to now with this church launch. So I guess I'm opening up the question of like, man, how do we get here? And you have 2 years worth of information, but how did we end up really deciding on simple gospel church? Like, we're actually going to do a church plant, to stepping down from young adults ministry to even moving our, selling our forever home to, oh, wow, we're out in Hockley, Texas. So I'm opening up a broad question or
Okay.
a broad statement of really how did we get to Hockley, Texas, and how do we get to, wow, we're actually going to church plant?
Well, I think I was actually thinking about this morning, and I think it kind of actually started before any of that, right? Because I think it's our marriage. I was thinking about, we've known each other for a very long time, since we were 14, but didn't fall in love till late 20s. And so I don't know, I was just thinking back on like the whole thing, and I was like, it all makes sense. Honestly, I thought we would probably end up as missionaries, because when we were dating, you kept asking me like, would you move to Africa with me? And I was like, I would if the Lord told us to go. And so I always knew we'd do ministry because we have a heart for ministry, and the Lord kind of started that in me in college. He's put it in you for a long time. And it's a common interest. I think if I don't know why we wouldn't be serving in some capacity if it was just something. Then young adults happened, and we really enjoyed it. We learned so much from it. And I just think that's how the Lord works, is he just births things within you, and they take off, and you don't really know where you're going until you're like, oh, what are we doing? Here we are in Hockley. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think it started from the get-go of just, it's a common interest that we have, but it's something that the Lord put in us, and that obviously attracted us to one another, that like we could get on board with. We have always loved serving together.
Do you know why I said Africa every time?
I always assumed because you've been there.
Scare people away. If they're not in for Africa, then they're not really in for anything that the Lord's wanting them to do.
Well, I feel like you.
So I always ask that.
You could have said worse places in Africa. You could have said.
Well, I'm thinking
Odessa.
Sand, dirt, nasty, hot as all get out. If
Texas.
Someone's on board to get with this, then someone's got to be on board to get with that. That's why I did it. That's why I always asked. Even right before marriage, I think I asked, "Are you sure?
Yeah.
If we have
you
nothing,
did.
are we cool?"
I was like,
But yeah, I think ultimately it does. When you look back on it, it starts from the beginning, and you walk through life not really knowing what's going on. You think you have your plan, and you have your purpose and your direction, and you're working towards something, but leaving room for that movement. And I think growing separately from each other, and then when we got married, growing together really kind of transformed that aspect of being sensitive to what the Lord's directing and calling. It wasn't something that just magically happened, and it wasn't something like, oh, I got this audible voice. It was more of nudges, more of even heart tugs from like, man, this is so heavy on my heart. Let's talk about it. And so we came to a place where we had our first kid really quick, and we had our second kid really quick, and we're about to have our third. But it's all according to his timing and his plan, right? And you don't step into a church plant, I don't think, without some of that life lived. And how can you pastor or walk with anybody if you haven't walked a little life out with kids on your own? You know what I mean? Like, I think there was aspects of this journey to this church plant in alignment with what you're saying that happened way before. There's a process and a growth that occurred that the Lord wanted us to walk through. And really prepared us for this. Now, I never would have guessed, because I did have a distaste for church, and I put that, church nowadays can be a difficult thing to define, and even pastors don't always have the cleanest track record, or really pastoring isn't their forte, and so there was a distaste that came along with that. But when we got our forever home, it was what I thought we were good at. Like, hey, we've got a big house for people to come hang out. We can do ministry here. There's people, we could have people on one side of the house, stay the night, people on the other side of the house stay the night. We had acreage. We had what I thought was everything we needed. And we had a 10-year plan of fixing it, right? So we bought the house with it needing work, knowing that.
Big projects, yeah.
And it took us 2 years to fix all those projects, not by want or desire, but because we had to. Everything just kept falling apart, and the new roof, the AC units, the plumbing, the flooring, like it just was a train wreck. But even that, the persistence, the willingness to work through it, and God's
provision.
Yeah, God's provision in that. If you want to take lead on that, what are some things that in that season of, not church launch, but that forever home that transpired of, God really started showing up and really, I think, sensitized us to what he was doing?
I would say for sure looking at the provision, because those things kept happening. We were pregnant with Ezra.
That's our second.
So we have Everly, pregnant with Ezra. It's like go time. We're going to be having a baby. Storm comes through. They're fixing the roof. It's so hot because it's July that the AC overworks itself, goes out. So we're trying to pay for a roof. We're trying to pay for a new AC. And it was just one of those situations where you hear about these stories and God is faithful, but then when you live it, it's like he really is. And it's not our money, because we started having checks come in the mail for to a T how much we needed for our ACs. And it just was one of those things of, and you're just, thank you, God, let's have a baby. Okay, great. And our room was upstairs. So that was where I wanted to be while we're in the newborn phase. And he just provided that the AC was fixed while we were in the hospital having him. So we came home to a cool house, which was great. And so that was really nice. And he's just faithful in those ways, and keep moving, keep trucking. We're moving on and everything. And he just keeps providing in those ways financially for us to do things that we had. I'm not so much a planner, but you are. We had this very well, sought out plan for an X amount of years. By year 5, we're going to have our new ACs. Well, okay, fast forward 1 year, they're all paid for and done, and
right.
They're running. We already have a new roof, blah, 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 all that stuff. And so we didn't really know what to do. We were like, you know what, God, we're just going to sit in this favor. Thank you. Bless you. We'll sit in this favor. Thank you so much for giving us this beautiful home, and hopefully we honor you with it. Great.
And those checks that were coming in the mail, the money that was coming in was from years ago, right?
Weird stuff.
How did you even get a hold of me? But I'll take your money.
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely.
I need it. Appreciate it. I ain't gonna deny that.
Let's go to the bank.
But growing up, I always heard those stories, right? And I've always oh yeah, that's good for them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
God's able.
God's able.
Absolutely.
But when it starts to happen to you, you're like, oh, this crap's real.
Oh yeah.
God is real, and God does provide, and He is always looking out for you. And if you're really under His covering and really trying to be led by Him, I think there is an avenue of being able to open up those blessings that come along with it. Not that everything's rainbows and butterflies. We were stressing out at times, bill to bill, check to check. But when it does happen, and she was like, oh, I can't. Those stories that you hear, they ain't fake. They're like, this is real. Yeah. He does move, and he does have you. Well,
and for sure we weren't asking either, because we didn't, I think, even know to ask for it. You know what I mean? We didn't know the ACs were going out. We didn't know, and he provided for it before we really even knew that there was a need for it. So even that is just encouraging of like, he sees the bigger picture. He knows the season we were going to be walking through, and he knew what we would be needing. So despite the fact that like just unawareness, like we didn't know the ACs were going to go out. We didn't know all those things we didn't know the storm was going to blow through and, all that stuff. But he was aware and he made a way. And so kind of moving forward from that portion of it, comes our next phase, which was the Lord just stirring emotions within us of taking care of your house. It's time to sell it. And he started speaking that to us separately. Josh kind of always teased because
the market was so hot.
Yeah, financially it was like we could just flip this and then just sell it. And I was like, this is he gave us this house. Why would we give it up? And he slowly started speaking the same thing in my heart. And that house was like gifted to us when when we went to go put an offer in. Our realtor didn't want to even ask because it was just a baffling. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to him, but we felt led to do it, and God moved, and here he is now asking us to sell it. Yeah. And but it was one of those, right, where he kept putting things in front of us to see, to hear, emotionally. Hey, I feel like, all joking aside, I think that's something we need to talk about. It was your words. We were driving, and you're like, hey, I think, I know you always joke about it, but I think this is something we need to talk about. And I was like, yeah, I think this is something we need to talk about. And that was a journey for me. Yeah. Not that it wasn't a journey for you, right? You always are moving. Every few years, you just have been moving. I've been moving. And when I came to that point, it's like, well, what do I strive for now? What do I work for now? I've always had this plan, this vision, this idea of something to strive for. I've always tried to be wise with my money. Not that I'm not now, but ultimately it was, are you going to listen or are you not? And I think we were on the back porch looking out on, the land, and it was, what now, Liz? Like, I don't even know, like, what's my life like without something to achieve or to work towards or to gain. And it was a completely rewire for me of, it's not about that. And will I be okay without it? What are you going to strive for now? Well, I think when I got to a point of whatever you want, I'll strive for. Yeah. And then it was, well, are the kids going to have fun? Are the kids going to have a good life? Are the kids going to enjoy the smaller things? And if we had taken that, I think it was a week, maybe 2 weeks, where we met with some mentors. We had conversations with another couple where they kind of laid it out of, hey, start to pray, start to write down reasons why he might be selling it, what's, pros and cons. But it was during that process where I think he revealed to both of us it's not about the tangible. And I was walking around the kitchen. I was probably crying and cleaning because I'm, an emotional cleaner.
An emotional cleaner. I'm an emotional cat sometimes. But I am. I'm trying to process through giving this up. And none of it's ours, and even kind of the process leading up to it, he helped us fix everything. But I was looking at all the pictures that we had in our house, and every single one of them was in one location, and it was the living room. And it's like, do you really need? They don't need all this. And every picture was either with me or with you or with both of us or with family or friends, and it was in the living room. And it was that revelation of they just need you. Be available. They don't need all the bells and whistles. They can have joy in their life outside of this house. So for me, that was the big kicker of, okay, it'll be all right. Yeah. It'll be all right. So we went to church, I think 2 Sundays later, and we had a pastor give a message, and it was on point to where we were at, of really trying to decide, are we going to do this? Are we not going to do this? Are we going to do this? Are we not going to do this? And he spoke directly to us, not verbatim, but his message was exactly where we were at. And we got back home, didn't say a word the whole entire time at church, didn't say a word the whole drive home, didn't say a word while we put the kids down for a nap, until I was eating, trying to ignore you, and you're like, hey, we ain't going to talk about this?
We got stuff to talk about.
And we did. And it was one of those, I think your question was, so is this not clear as day for you? And I think we both started crying. It was like, I think this is it. I think we're done here. Which leads us to, okay, let's put it on the market. At that point in time, it's hard because it ain't the right time to do it. The market's not hot anymore, and it's a big house, and they just don't go quick. And so we put everything we had into it. When I say everything, everything.
Counting our pennies.
And just trusting that the Lord was going to provide. In some instances, we were hitting walls for trying to pay the mortgage, trying to get the bills paid, and had conversations even with my brother in regards of money that we have in a side.
Which is my nightmare.
Reaching out to people is not what
both of our
do.
nightmares.
But if we can do it on our own.
I was like, no, it's okay. We'll just live on the streets. It's fine.
We'll just be poor. Let's not have a house. The kids will be fine. They just need us. That's what the Lord told us. They just need us. We're good.
I know.
But we had those moments, right? Where we had to finagle money, move money around.
Trying to be faithful.
And wise. And what was real faithful was a year ago purchasing a cruise. And having that moment of, how are we going to pay for this cruise? Like, we don't have any more money. And we would lose the money, right? Because it just got done with the COVID times, and there wasn't that type of money back. It was
a real lose-lose that turned into a win-win.
The lose-lose definitely
seemed like a lose-lose.
It turned into a win-win.
It was a win-win.
And so we decided to just, take the time to go breathe for a second.
Be together.
And it was truly a blessing, and what I feel like was the lighter fluid to what the Lord was trying to do. So the cruise, if you want to take that, and what happened on the cruise? She was really upset because she's like, what are we doing here? I ain't spending no money.
Which is funny because that's a little opposite how
You are the spender.
I am the spender. I'm the spender, but like, you're a saver. Like, you don't spend any money. So if I buy food, I'm
that spending. Coffee. When I see that coffee bill start climbing up, I'm like, come on.
I don't think I'm outrageous by any means, but
those Amazon boxes that keep showing up every time I'm walking through the front door.
They're basic needs for our family.
Basic needs.
But for sure, of the two of us, I am absolutely the spender. But yes, So I was very like trying to be wise because we don't have any money, and I'm like, I know we're gonna go. Like, we're already gonna spend time on a boat, and like, I'm just like, I mean, we can go sit on the deck and just sit there. Like, great, we don't have to spend anything to do that.
And I'm like, hey, do you want a fancy drink? You want to, pina colada it up? And for those that might get offended by it, but it was our little vacation.
Oh, it was great. Right? I had never been on a cruise either, so it was just very. It was it was fun. It was awesome. So loved it. Can't wait to go back. It's going to be great. But, so that was kind of the mode of the whole thing. Again, this was like, it's the month. So we're having a mortgage payment coming up. So stressful because it's like, that's how it feels. It's like we're on a ship right now and we have a mortgage to pay. We have children and we have, is this the most responsible decision?
We had gone to our room and for some reason we got into the worst conversation about finances before we go out to try to enjoy the cruise. Right. And it was one of those where it was like, I think do we want to, if worse comes to worse, like, do we go talk to our dads? And you're like, we ain't talking to my dad.
We ain't talking to my dad.
And I was like, well, I ain't afraid to talk to my dad. I said, if the Lord's already brought me to a place of where I'm at, and he continues to take me there, of really dying to self, hey, how much more do I die to self than have to go to my dad and be like, hey, Daddy, I need money. Yeah. We're out of money. I'll pay you back, but we're out of money. Like, that's really, that conversation took place.
For sure.
And so you're like, nah, I think you said, well, I'm going to go work out. Yeah. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go buy a card for bingo.
Yep.
No, we don't need to spend money. I'm like, it's $25. We're going to go play bingo. We're going to enjoy it. He's pretty funny. They're pretty funny when they do it. We're just going to go enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And you kind of, I wouldn't say huffed off, but it was a stressful conversation. Like, oh. Yeah, let's get out of here. I'm going. I'm getting this off my mind.
Yeah.
And I went and sat for an hour and a half in lines to try to get a bingo card. Mm-hmm. And watching the people come and leave because it was taking so long, even the fun conversations goofing off with the people that were waiting forever with me. Mm-hmm. We get to the table, and this couple in front of me, they were great. We're bantering back and forth with each other, and he picks up a whole stack, she picks up a whole stack, and, hey, we're going to do this many, we're going to do this many. Mm-hmm. And being the guy, she had the whole stack, right? You said, hey, I'm a little bit of the spender. She was a little bit of the spender too. And he chuckles and said, we don't need that. Go ahead and put that back down. So the one that she had, she put back down is the one that I picked up and just won $25. That's all I got, right? And we go and we're watching people. Hey, there's third place, second, and then the last big hoorah. Yeah. And he's calling the numbers and he's like, hey, who has 2 left? And nobody raises their hand except for you. And I was like, oh my gosh. And we look at each other like, how crazy would this be? Like, how are we going to pay our mortgage? Well, again, to a T, just about to a T, what that winnings would have been was our mortgage. Yeah. And then they call the last 2, and we win. Mm-hmm. And we start bawling.
It was so funny.
We start crying, and everyone's like, all right, it's not that big a deal, guys.
It's bingo.
Congratulations.
Like, so much more. You don't know.
And then the first place prize got split.
Yeah, which was great.
Which was even more, but it was even less because it got split.
Yeah, I feel like the Lord was just showing us how in the details he is on that one. Like 2 people tied on the last one. It was like a huge auditorium. It's just wild. And he just was, to me, to us, I think, just saying like, I am in the details. Don't you even worry about any of it. You need your mortgage paid. I got you. And
yeah.
We are 2 people that don't like to be in that situation at all, but we do feel like the Lord pushed us to complete reliance on him. And that was, he just provided.
Yeah, he did. And then at that point in time, we actually got to enjoy it, saying, hey, we got another month.
We did.
And then, a month later, we're in the same thing, and I'm trying to get our tax return in. Yeah. We'll come back to the cruise, but even that, I'm pushing to get the tax return in. And when do you ever get your tax return in 2 days? Mm-hmm. Never. Mm-hmm. And we got our tax return in 2 days to help pay the mortgage for another month. Yeah. But going back to the cruise, we go on our excursion. Mm-hmm. I'm an introvert at heart. Not that I can't not be an extrovert, but introvert
You're deceiving.
is who I am. I did not want to be in a crowd, so we took our 8-person excursion to the Mayan ruins. Mm-hmm. And I'll let you take it from here because you were the one that started the conversation that really brought us to meeting these individuals.
We took a bus out there and it was time to go. And so we were not going to be doing any extra shopping for sure. And so we went back to the bus while everyone else did their shopping. So it was just us and then another couple that was older. And they were just kind of sitting in the bus. And so the way it was sitting, it was really hot. And I knew, because remember, you were really hot on the way there and everything. And so I was trying to see if, like, did you want to switch? But then I see this older gentleman, and he's, like, kind of messing with his knee. And so I was just like, I feel like I should give him my seat because I was getting tons of air. And so I asked him, I was like, are you okay? And he said, oh, I had knee surgery recently. I'm just trying to stretch it out. And I was like, oh, okay. And kind of sparked a conversation.
And here I am. I got a free cerveza.
Oh, yeah. He was.
Right? I had my free beer, and I'm like, I don't have to pay for it. Why not have a nice drink? It's hot. And I'm sitting in the car with my beer in my hands. Yeah. And
it's a bus, so it's kind of like, tandem. So it's like me, Josh, and then this couple. And anyways, they said something about, they end up saying the words, we're at a conference in Dallas. And so I went... These are church people, a couple that are at a conference in Dallas, like they know the Lord. And so I just asked them, oh, do y'all know Jesus? And they were like, yeah, we do. And so kind of got into a conversation. They said, yeah, we obviously are involved in our church and everything, but we're really church planners, which the Lord had started to put on our heart. And so, yeah, I just said, look, we only have an hour bus ride, and I feel like we have a lot to talk about. And so I just kind of told them the Cliff Notes version of selling our house, doing all this, trying to pray through what the Lord might be leading us in, but there is a possibility it could be church planning. And led to great conversation on the bus, which then led to let's get together for lunch tomorrow, which turned into a 3-hour conversation. And these people have become so influential on us, more than just church planting. Just they're encouraging. They are they just love the Lord, and that is why they're here. And they just live a life for Him. And so we appreciate them. They encourage us so much, and know what they're doing because they've church planted before. And so they've just been a great resource for us. Both of us. For Josh, obviously, he's in a different position as being the head of the church. Pastor Ken has been just wonderful in giving him advice and just a support, truly a support, I would say, is like his biggest thing. I mean, they love Josh. They love both of us, but
everyone loves you.
They love Josh.
They have to deal with me. They're like, oh, where's Elizabeth at?
That's
every time. Hey, where's Elizabeth? Oh, hey, Josh, it's good seeing you. But where's Elizabeth? Is she coming?
That is true. Oh my gosh,
everyone loves you.
But but they just have been so encouraging, and like a season that how do you relate to it? How do you prepare? Like how do you do it? I feel like the Lord just like put you in it.
Right.
And so yeah, they've been great. Awesome.
Yeah, I think Ken and Kay, they're our angels.
Oh, they're great.
And they have brought us to a place of comfort with a church plant. They've walked with us through difficult expectations that we've gathered through the years, especially me. You have pastors that are more teachers and speakers than they are pastors. And what I mean by that is there's not a whole lot of walking with in pastoring. It's more of, you go get a good lesson and you go home. Not that some of my past pastors haven't been pastors, but that's just what you have in today's church. And they walked with you. And that's where I think it became apparent that this isn't just some feel-good, I don't want to say fake Christian, but fake pastor. Like these
There's
people.
There's no walking through the motions.
Yeah, like
they live it.
They live it.
They live it.
They don't just say it, they live it. And so when they're like, hey, let's get each other's numbers afterwards, let's reach out, let's talk.
They meant it.
They meant it, and they made sure of it, right?
Yeah.
And so, FaceTimes, team meetings, phone calls, challenging me to let go of the distaste that I have for this idea of pastor, what this created idea of what a pastor's supposed to be, really broke through the walls of it's a willing heart, right? And helped me get to where it's okay, if that's what it was. So for months, since the cruise, almost 2 years now.
January to be 2 years.
Yeah, they have walked with us and have given us direction, wisdom, prayed with us, and just a divine appointment that I will forever be grateful for. They have helped me become a better man in Christ. I think a better husband, a better person for people around me. That when you say something, you stick by it, and they are ones that don't just play Christian, they live Christian, and they live Christ. So super grateful. And that was a cruise that we were talking about not being apart. And they've helped us navigate, whether it's missions, whether it was church planning, whether it was helping our church at that point in time, was talking about growth, was expansion. We had a friend go and church plant, and it was one of those we were trying to pray and navigate, and it was cool how the Lord blessed us financially to where we could do it all. So we started slowly moving, and it was like, hey, you don't put me in a box, we're going to do it all. So we started doing everything and being a support, and then he really put it on our hearts to church plant. And we had our navigations of, hey, we were asked at one point in time to consider going to Odessa to help bring life to a church. Went through those processes and prayed about it and really sought out if that was something we were going to do.
Yeah.
And when it first got brought to our attention, it was heck no. For me, it was heck no. You were willing and very, very noble. But me, I was like, take me to Africa. I don't want to go to Odessa.
Yeah.
But there was a shift, right? He's either in control and directing, and we're either following his leading or we're not. So, Lord, if this is an open door, then let's go. And I know at one point in time, it was us trying to see, could we actually live here? Could this be where he's calling us? The door shut, but we did go visit, and we had our friend Shanae be a part of that process as well.
Yeah, it was a fun trip.
Yeah, it was a fun trip, and it was a opportunity to see that what the Lord was stirring in our hearts could be for Odessa, could be for anywhere, could be for Africa, could be for Houston, could be for ultimately Hockley. But it was a process for getting us to this church plant heart.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when we were going through, and a lot's occurred, a lot's happened, people have come into our lives, but it was an aspect of when we kind of got done with Odessa, it was, man, I just feel like we're supposed to, the heartbeat behind what was driving us to the possible church plant. And when he showed us, man, it could be anywhere. It was, man, I think it's a church plant. And that's a whole nother weight. But even that, Ken and Kay, hey, start telling people. Start sharing with your close friends, and let's see if there's some affirmation or if God moves. And then I go to Pastor Tony at the time and tell him, and he starts laughing. And Pastor Tony's really kind of grandfather, but has been a pastor for my family and grew up and has seen me grow up. And it was one of those where he chuckled and he had a verse for me and said, man, I've been waiting years to give you this verse. And it's, you didn't choose me, I chose you, right?
Yep.
And whatever you ask for, it shall be given. And he said, we were at a worship night randomly one night, and it was given to me, and ultimately I was told to wait until you came to a place. And he said, I feel like this is the time. And he said, ultimately it's something that we've seen for years, and I'm not the only one that can affirm that. So we just started having those affirmations, affirmation after affirmation after affirmation, to where even when we were looking for a house, we were in Tomball, and it was like, ugh, I'm not really feeling Tomball. Any house we went into was like, nah, this isn't comfortable. And then we would go to Magnolia, and it was like, ugh, I'm not really sure. Then we would try Hempstead. Hey, let's try Hempstead. Ugh. But for some reason, we kept going to Hockley. And then we would go to Hockley, and you would go a lot of the times and take the kids to parks to where you would have conversations, right? And you had conversations with people, and they're like, man, we just need a good, healthy church where people can connect and just do life with each other. To where ultimately it was a house that I'd shown you for forever. You're like, nah, I just don't like it. And I'm like, man, it's pretty cheap for a house. I think it's got enough space for us. Why don't we check it out? No, I just don't really like it. Where you had a coworker say, how are you supposed to know if the Lord's wanting you there if you've never gone to visit it?
Miss Yvonne.
Miss Yvonne.
She got me. I was
But
like, that's fair.
we went, and sure enough, it was like, man, this is it.
Peace, automatic peace of just like, oh, this is our home.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And then, while we're driving around looking at it, we're realizing that, because the initial thought was, why Hockley? Why do you keep pulling us to Hockley? Nothing's out here. There's a huge church, community of faith right down the road. Why do you need us out here? And then when we purchased the house, there's just developments, 2 huge developments right around our little neighborhood. And then up north in Waller, there's a bunch of developments happening. And it brings you to a place of, he really does have everything in control. And he really does have a plan and purpose for your life. And ultimately, it's just being sensitive to that leading and sensitive to letting go of the difficult things or the things that you're holding on tightly to allow that move of the Holy Spirit to get you where he's desiring for you to be. And ultimately that was Hockley, Texas.
Yeah.
And ultimately it was to a place of we're church planting.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's the next journey of making this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And even then we're seeing God move and bring people and affirm and the highs and lows that come with a church plant. And it's just been a radical, cool thing. Growing up in church my whole life, I've always heard the stories.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't ever believe them, but it's like, yeah, that was for them. Or, yeah, that's a great story. But when it starts to happen in your life and you allow that sensitivity to occur for the Lord to navigate and move, man, you can't deny. You just can't deny it.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, I think that's really our quick, it's not been quick, but our little journey of really what brought us to a place of church planning.
Mm-hmm.
And what brought us to Hockley was really, I would say in a nutshell, trying to be sensitive to what the Holy Spirit was leading and being willing to do the difficult. And it's not like, oh, we're martyrs here, we gave up everything. The Lord's blessed us tremendously, and there's not like, oh, we're living on, by the crumbs on our plate. No, He's given us favor in my job. He gave you favor in seasons at your job. But I think goes back to how do we get to a church plant? It was for 2 years we have been so intentional with time with the Lord, and we've been so intentional with allowing us to be sensitive with the leading of the Holy Spirit. How did you get to Hockley? Man, being sensitive.
I don't really know.
To the leading of the Holy Spirit, right? But it's kind of what occurred. It was just like, this is uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm not really liking it here either.
Yeah.
Well, I like that park we go to with the kids. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of do too. Yeah. And then we found another park. Well, this is a pretty cool park too.
Oh, yeah.
And then you just started having peace being out at Hockley. But I think that takes you being available and willing to go where you might not want to go, and being willing to go where you don't want to go.
Well, now we have just like a heart and I don't know, I like Hockley. Like when we start you start hitting like the pastures and you start hitting that part, and you're really not that far from town. Hockley sounds like it is a million miles away, but it's really not that far. And you start leaving civilization, you start hitting the country, and it's like there's something about it. Yeah, it's really nice. Which everyone keeps telling us is leaving. It's not going to be there very long, which is fine. I feel like the Lord's just like laying a foundation of it's our home. Yeah. And I think for this season, maybe long term, this might be the rest of our lives. Like this is our home, and it's just nice that He's able to change the hearts of man and just make something comfortable that, we're both from Houston. We're not far from Hockley. You were raised in Hockley.
Yeah, ranch country.
Yeah, and so like it's not like it's foreign to us, but it's far enough that it is there is like a becoming home aspect, and the Lord is doing that for sure. And He's bringing people that make the home. You know what I mean? Like He's building a community already of just for our family, really. Like I believe that it'll develop into church, but it feels like we have a family forming out there, and it's been it's just nice. It really is. It just feels comfortable in a way that you just can't explain it. It just feels good. Yeah.
That's a part of, even again, we can go on forever, but that's a part of the kind of the next journey of really what brought us here, and what it's going to look like moving forward, and really what God instilled in our hearts for Hockley and for a church, Simple Gospel Church. So yeah, it's excited to talk about that too at some point in time.
Yeah.